Tonight's omnibus is about David Bedford. David Bedford, the composer, not the middle-distance runner. He's one of the very few composers working in this country today who's equally at home with the symphony orchestra and the rock and roll band. It was Bedford who brought together at the Royal Albert Hall the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and the guitarist Steve Hillage to play Bedford's symphonic arrangements of Mike Oldfield's music, Tubular Bells and Hurgast Ridge. Since his work with Mike Oldfield, David Bedford has produced a number of records of his own compositions, ranging from Star's End for rock trio and symphony orchestra, to The Rime of the Ancient Mariner with Robert Powell as the narrator, the Odyssey, his musical interpretation of Homer, and Instructions for Angels. David Bedford's been a composer for 30 years, since he was a boy. He studied under Lennox Berkeley at the Royal Academy of Music, and then spent some time with the Italian composer Luigi Nono. His catalogue of compositions ranges through symphonic, chamber and vocal works, some with extraordinary titles, like Holy Thursday with Squeakers, The Tentacles of the Dark Nebulae, because he liked to be at home. He's always been interested in exploring new sounds and new musical ideas. In 1972, he wrote a piece called With 100 Kazoos, which involved the very active participation of 100 members of the audience who played the kazoos. As well as musical notation, the score included a number of pictures for which the performers had to invent musical equivalents. Some Bright Stars for Queen's College. This piece called for girls' voices, chest beating and twirling hosepipes. The Odyssey, which was performed at the Royal Albert Hall last year, included an orchestra of wineglass players. The guitar soloist was Mike Oldfield. Last year, we commissioned David Bedford to write a piece of music for Omnibus, and we specifically asked for a piece of television music in which the visualization, the choice of pictures to complement the sounds, was to be an integral part of the work. We also decided to film the processes of composition, the months of research and preparation and experiment that led up to tonight's first performance. And so, before we see and hear this new piece itself, let us go back to the spring of 1977, when the composer David Bedford shaved off his beard and went to work.
The English landscape, which has often inspired composers, was the starting point for this piece. I decided to concentrate on a particularly beautiful area, which is also rich in historical, mythological and astronomical associations, the Ridgeway. The Ridgeway is one of the oldest footpaths in existence. It runs across the high downs from Avebury in Wiltshire to Ivinghoe in Bedfordshire. People were walking along it more than 10,000 years ago, even before the last ice age. Along its path lie a number of man-made monuments, perhaps the most striking of which is the White Horse of Uffington. Here I am on top of White Horse Hill. I'm standing just on top of the head of the horse. It really is an extraordinary object, a masterpiece of art by any standards. It's about 360 feet long. Nobody knows when it was made or who made it, and thus many theories have been advanced to explain it. For example, since it can be seen best from the air or from a long way away, that it was a landing beacon for flying saucers. It's also been suggested that King Alfred had it carved to celebrate a famous victory over the Danes in 871 at Ashdown, which is fairly close to here. Another idea advanced is that it isn't a horse, it's a dragon, and that in fact it's the dragon that St. George killed. And there's a little hill just down there where it's suggested that he killed the dragon with a white mark on the top where no grass will ever grow, which is where the blood was spilt out. But the most likely explanation, at least the one that's generally accepted, is that it was carved in the 1st century BC by a tribe of Celts who lived around here and was a tribal emblem, since a few coins have been found with a similarly stylized horse facing to the right. Although, of course, the horse could have been there a long time before that and could have been taken over, because it's so extraordinary, could have been taken over by the Celtic tribe when they arrived as a religious object. There is a legend that it's gradually moving up the hill. It hasn't actually moved while we've been here, so I think we must describe that as a legend. Once I decided to use the White Horse as the basis for the piece, the real work started. For me, there's always an intermediate stage in the process of composition, an incubation period, when various musical ideas are buzzing around in the subconscious, although it's too early to put pen to paper. Composers brought up on the 9-to-5 work ethic feel guilty if they're not sitting writing at the desk or playing on the piano, but I find it's essential to spend some time doing something else. Twice a week, I teach music to the girls of Queen's College in Harley Street, where I've built up a large and enthusiastic choir, and I wanted to use them in the new piece, especially since, during my researches, I'd discovered a poem by G.K. Chesterton called The Ballad of the White Horse, and I decided to use some of the verses as the climax to the work. That, by the way, is the White Horse of Uffington.
Really like that?
Yes, it does. Now, will you please start singing when you're singing the first, second, third, really quietly, because you're never going to last. It takes about 10 minutes. You'll never last to the end if you belt it out full blast at the beginning. Okay? So we'll have a run through. Now, please be careful about, listen. The first line each time comes down the whole tone. So the first line is going to come down, and then it alternates with the one that comes down a semitone. And you must get that semitone, even if I'm not doing anything on the piano. So just to practice that, I want you all to go, get your first page. See where it goes, aeons on aeons gone. Yes. All right, sing it. That speed. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, stop. Now sing Peace and War in Western Hills and the White Horse looked on. All right, ready? And the white. Next line down. 1, 2, 3. Stop. On your feet, everybody. Okay. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. as well as the conventional instruments and the choir, I'm using in this piece my keyboard instruments. It's been a preoccupation of mine for several years now to try and integrate electric instruments with conventional instruments. I'll take you around the selection of instruments. This is a cat synthesizer. It's a fairly small and cheap one. You can change the sounds very quickly. This one here is the string synthesizer, and you can either make it sound rather like an organ or like a so-called string section. And it's got a few different stops. You can just have the violin stop and sound like Mantovani if you want. So I try and avoid that sound. Then coming over here is the electric piano. And all these instruments go through the mixer, piano strings and so on. This thing is called a sequencer, and basically what it does is make repeated patterns. All these instruments can be played through the repeat echo device, including the microphone. Inside this box is a piece of tape which simply records what you've played and then repeats it. So you'll get something like this. Here it goes. On a good day, you can hear that noise for 3 or 4 miles. This is the Blowing Stone. It's just down the hill from the White Horse. Local legends associate it with King Alfred and his great battles with the Danes. The idea being, I suppose, that if you wanted to get the chaps together in a hurry, you gave an almighty blast on the Blowing Stone.
Probably no output from the reeds. It's not affecting the note at all. You could have the other one as well,
wait.
but at a slightly different rate. The two will go out of phase.
This is Mike Ratledge, founder member of the Soft Machine. He's going to share the keyboards with me in the first performance, and I invited him to my house to experiment with some of the sounds we would need. If I play the Blowing Stone again, if you bring that in sort of before it ends.
Yeah. Well, it's a question of level, I think, largely.
Yes. I'm not too happy with the lower octave, actually.
No. Well, you can bring it up. Or not have it there at all. And if you actually kind of, because the release doesn't seem to be affecting it.
It's supposed to go downwards a bit.
Yes, I mean, if you actually bring it down on the tuning here.
Ah, right. Lioness is 4 beats. Rest, and the king. Okay, Lords that died in Lioness. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. With that. That's it. 1, 2, 3. man's went up. This is the song that the girls sing at the climax of the piece. The words are by G.K. Chesterton, and it's about King Alfred fighting the Danes. I've got it up like this, as a sort of long chart, because I wanted it to start with hardly any instruments at all, and gradually build up. And to avoid it building up too soon, I had to have it out. There's 7 verses, with a semitone higher each verse. So I could see and bring instruments in, gradually building up. As you can see, the last verse, everybody's in. It took me about 2 seconds to think of the idea. Poem by G.K. Chesterton, sing a whole song. But when it comes to writing it out, it's a little different. I mean, this page, for example, which is about here, just for interest, I counted up the number of notes, and there are 561 notes on this page alone. Now, the whole song is 300 bars, there are 5 bars on every page, which means, this is an average size page, in fact it gets much busier towards the end, that there's going to be 30,000 notes to be written just for this song.
I want extra money.
You don't have to pay 30,000, no. No, we're the tonal lifeline, we're just holding the right chords all the time, and all the instruments are going mad. But it's interesting to think about it. It took me 2 seconds to think of writing the song, and it's going to take me 2 months actually to write it down.
And just a physical act of writing as a...
Physical act of writing, yes. One of these pages with 561 notes will take 3 hours to write. I got the girls to do a tape of some of the song.
Yeah.
So we'll have a bash at it. Okay, here they are on the tape. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Loud, Mike. If you follow the path of the Ridgeway south of the White Horse, you come after about a mile to a Stone Age graveyard, the atmosphere of which I wanted to evoke at the beginning of my piece. It's called Wayland's Smithy, although it isn't a smithy, nor has it any connection with Wayland. It is, in fact, a burial chamber. The bodies were discovered about halfway down this long barrow, which is about 160 feet long. It's incredibly old. It was built in the New Stone Age, Neolithic Age. At the same time, they were building Stonehenge and Avebury. Latest dating methods assign a date of around about 3000 BC, which means, in fact, that it's older than the pyramids in Egypt. It's called Wayland's Smithy. From Anglo-Saxon times, Wayland was the smith of the Anglo-Saxon gods, derived, one presumes, from Voland, the Scandinavian god. Since they were both lame, they ultimately derived from Hephaestus, the Greek god, who was also lame. The legend is that if you put a groat on this stone here and leave your horse overnight, when you come back the next day, it'll be re-shod. There is a legend also associated with the White Horse of Uffington, which is that way, that Wayland made the shoes for the White Horse. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. And they do this long slide up in 6 parts, the girls. And when they get to that high note, and you come in, or we both come in at the top on the E major chord, I've got it written out here. Here we are. With the E chord on the strings and the bass on the arp.
Right. Now, before the sequencer has been playing before that, hasn't just immediately...
You've just stopped the sequencer, yes. Should we have a listen first?
Right, yes.
So it's a... 1, 2, 3, 4... But now, after you've done that slide, most of you take a break and listen to the piece or drop off to sleep or whatever you want to do. But for 4 of you, or 5 of you I think it is, I want even higher sound than we've already had, because after that slide up, there's going to be the most enormous noise from all the instruments, going absolutely berserk for the White Horse prance, what is it, White Horse stamps in the White Horse Vale. So, okay, this is a cylinder of helium. And what it does, of course, is to make the sound travel faster. So it goes higher. 2.7 times. Officially, it goes 2.7 times faster than in air. So you should be able, if you suck in enough, to sing an octave and a bit higher. I'll show you what it sounds like anyway. Here we go. You have to take enormous amounts in.
Yes, it still works.
It's all gone. See, it doesn't take... Let's have Diney have a go. Come on. The thing to do is to let all the normal air out. Right? Completely relax. And then I'll put this in, turn it on. Take an enormous, huge breath, as much as you can get in. And then the vocal effect I want is a very quick slide up. So, like we did on the earlier bit. And then hold a high note and make it waver a bit. So I'll go... Oh dear. Right, ready? The last stage of preparation, the full orchestral rehearsal. Besides the choir and the keyboards, I've scored the piece for 4 strings, only cellos and double basses, 4 woodwind, 7 brass and some percussion.
There's something very high here which isn't practical. I'm sure that's not right. I've got that written, but it's 2 octaves above what's written at the first bar of U.
That's correct. Actually, yes, that is correct.
The conductor is my brother, Stuart Bedford. I've been composing for some 30 years. He's been conducting for 20 years. So I thought it was about time he conducted one of my pieces. This is it, and this is its first performance.